All right, people. Shit's getting real. I am making a long video, and I was about to, for this paid subscription tier of the Substack, but this is actually going to go out to everybody. Everyone who's joined the Substack, the Ask Amanda column, everyone on the internet. I'm just going to put this out there kind of as a teaser of how I'm going to do these videos for the next few weeks. If you've missed the memo, I'm doing an advice column. I'm hosting it on Substack. I'm their writer in residence for the whole month of February. I just put out the first advice column. I'm going to read it to you right now. And I'm making this video because there's one option on the Substack to have a paid subscription. And it's $5 a month. And I was like, what can I do to thank people for giving me $5 a month to write this advice column for the month of February? And I was like, podcasty, audio, video. I took a poll from the first, 200 like early adopters, and they all said video. And I could have just sat down and just read the advice column aloud and like put on some lippy and tried to look pretty, but I'm me. I don't like planning. I like things to feel organic, if you know me. And so as I was making my coffee to like sit down and make this relatively adult looking video, I was like, fuck it. I'm going to take you into the kitchen with me. I have to make this video anyway. I know I'm only going to give myself one take because I'm so fucking busy and I only have an hour to do this. So I'm going to make coffee in front of you and I'm going to show you my house a little bit and then I'm going to sit down and show my Substack to you and read you the advice column itself, which will probably take, 10 minutes. And I'm just gonna fucking do it. No lippy. Lippy, by the way, is what they call in New Zealand, which is where I am in my kitchen. That's what they call lipstick. And people wear it here really unironically. Like, there's a lot of unironic lipstick in New Zealand. And I find myself feeling constantly torn between wearing it ironically and unironically because as a card-carrying feminist, I have strong feelings in all directions about lippy. And also, like, as a confused person who's, like, part butch, part femme, lipstick's powerful. It means a lot of things. That's for another advice column. Should I wear lipstick? What does it mean? I mean, basically, if you want the short answer, the answer is yes. Okay, here's my coffee ritual. I thought you might want to know. I take a little cup. I take my AeroPress. Non-endorsement, no brand endorsement. I just fucking like this thing. It's an AeroPress. It's like a little coffee contraption for travelers. I pour in, and then I stir it around, which I'm not even sure is something you're supposed to do, but I do it. My life is crazy right now. I've been living in New Zealand for 2 years. I haven't been to my home since August of 2019. And if you're just catching up with me, I've been waylaid in New Zealand because of COVID for a really long time. And I am only just starting to feel a little bit normal, and I'm not even feeling normal. I'm feeling like new normal, whatever. We need words for this shit. That's your job, Amanda. The words. I don't have the words right now. All right, I'm making my coffee. So about the advice column, I'm pressing it, by the way, if you want to see what I'm doing. Do you want to, by the way, do you want to see my camera stand? Here's my camera stand. It's the compost bucket and a container of sweetened condensed milk. This is how professional I am. There's my fruit bowl. Here's my kitchen. It's not bad. I've been living in this Airbnb for a year this month, funded by my patrons, because that's the way it goes. Okay, and so now I'm squishing, and then I'm going to take this coffee over to the table, and I'm going to read to you. So before I read this to you, there's one other little piece of information I want to give you, which is why I'm doing this period. My life has been so fucking unpredictable, and also in lockdown and, touring right now and trying to make an income from touring. Bad idea, right? For lots of reasons that I probably don't need to explain to you. There's my perfect coffee. Oh, check it out. Wait, wrong side. Black. Among other things, I've started drinking black coffee because it's better. Here's my living room. Want to see New Zealand? I'll show you a little New Zealand. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take you upstairs. This is also by way of explanation of why it might get loud. Like, I'm not doing this in a recording studio. Obviously, I'm doing it in my house. It might get loud, and if it gets loud, it's because there is this insane thing happening next door to me right now, right here. It's loud. Check this out. See this? This house next door to me. They're moving. The house! They're moving the actual house up the hill. It's very Kiwi. They're like, we're not going to waste this house. We're just going to move it. So if you hear like trucks and beeping and shit like that, that's why. All right. I'm going to show you a little New Zealand. This is, you saw a little bit out there. This is my, back into the kitchen. This is my yard. You can hear the bugs. It's high summer. This is my little, these are the things I'm about to put in my garden. I won't show you my whole garden. I'm getting really off topic, aren't I? But you get me going and fucking hell. I'm on Waiheke Island, Aotearoa, New Zealand. Here are my tomatoes. Just thought I'd show you. Pretty proud of my tomatoes. I've been here in New Zealand long enough to plant fucking tomatoes. I just can't even believe my existence. And now I put my coffee down. Okay, so let's get to it. Here's my living room, my piano, borrowed from one of my patrons. And this is one of my favorite little pieces of my little house, the vinyl. Almost all of this is borrowed from various people on Waiheke Island. This is the stuff that I've bought. This is all borrowed. This is all borrowed. This is all borrowed. How much of this vinyl do you actually listen to, Amanda? Almost none of it. That's nice to look at, isn't it? All right. What I was going to say in the kitchen was I started this Substack. I took this opportunity to be Substack's writer in residency for February because no touring, no predictability, and also I don't even know where I'm going to be. My life is so insane right now that I'm not really quite sure where I'm going to be physically for the next 4 months because of reasons having to do with my kid and my family and borders and visas and all sorts of crazy shit. So when Substack came to me and said, do you want to write a column? I said, yeah. That would be a good way for me to work in February. Just write and have a deadline. I'm like kind of almost a boss, but not really. A deadline, right? A weekly advice column where I have to get my shit done and I really have to sit down and think and write and I can't put it off because there's a deadline. So without further ado, I'm going to read you guys this first one that I wrote. Ask Amanda number 1. I'm going to read you the question. I'm going to read you the answer. And then I'm also going to, at the end, talk a little bit about what's come up in the comments. And maybe also walk you through the artwork a little bit because I'd love to tell you guys about the process of how we're making these illustrations and how Sarah Beatson, the illustrator, and I are doing this because it's a real like awesome jazz improv of how we're putting these images together. So we'll talk about that at the end. Bonus if you're nerdy or curious about that sort of stuff. And for now, I'm going to try and look into the camera here. I might even just hold the phone. I'm going to just read to you. And here we go. After a 9-minute and 46 minute preamble. And a reminder to all of you, this one is free for everyone. But For the following 3 weeks, the column is going to be for print, for free, for everyone. And if you want the video component, be a paid subscriber. It's $5 a month. This is the paywalled thing. This is the preview advertisement of the paywalled thing. And you know me, I'm very fucking transparent and honest about everything. This is how it goes. And one last thing before I dig into this, I'll be reading all the comments as usual. So if you have any thoughts about like this, the video, how to do things, ideas, I love ideas, tell me, because I'm reading. So this is it. Here's the post. I'm just literally going to read off the internet. Here it is. I'm going to read off the post. It's the first thing you will see. I'm going to just turn the phone around. There's the beautiful image by Sarah Beatson. Welcome to Ask Amanda #1. I will be here for all of February, reading and responding. Comments are open to everyone. Please be kind. Hi, Amanda. I'm dying of cancer at 39. Yes, it's very sad. Thank you. My husband and love of my life, Jason, is finding himself very much afraid of the crippling grief he expects will follow my death. I know you spent some time in a similar situation with Anthony. How did you get through that fear, and what advice would you give to my husband or your younger self about how to face it? Thanks very much, Penny. I need a cup of coffee already. Let me just say before I read you my answer, we got about 300 letters to begin with, 300 questions. And I had like a top 10 or 20. And I didn't think I was going to answer this one. And when I actually sat down to start writing, I was like, what is urgent? There was all this vaccine stuff and pandemic stuff and rape stuff and abortion stuff and abuse and everything felt urgent. But this one, I was like, oh, this is a different level of urgency because this person is dying. I'm not going to put this one off for the last column. Anyway, here is my response. And I might switch camera hands a little bit in case my hand gets tired because I'm just... See if I balance this up on my hand. Is that going to work? I think this is working. I don't know. Hopefully this will work. God, it will be fucking terrible if I got 25 minutes into this video and then just something went wrong. But here we go. Me and my tech team. Dear Penny. Wow, okay. I don't know how aggressive your cancer is, and I hope you get this in time. I've been sitting here for a few weeks reading the hundreds of letters that came into the Ask Amanda address, and although many of them feel more urgent than others, yours stood out. And also I'd love if you wrote back, and then I give the email address, and actually Penny did write back. I'll talk to you about that at the end. First, I just want to say this. I love you, Penny, and I'm thinking about you right now as I type this from my desk in New Zealand. What a strange world, isn't it? What happens and what doesn't happen and what we do with what we're handed. I'm wondering how you are feeling at this very instant, how your body and heart are doing, and I'm hoping that you're not in too much physical or emotional pain. I can tell that you're not looking for my sympathy, so I won't do or say the sorts of things that I imagine you're hearing a lot right now. I'm not an expert on death and grieving. I'm just a musician writing an advice column, but I'll stop clearing my throat and give this a go. I've been around a lot of people who were sick and sometimes dying. You mentioned Anthony, which means you've probably read my book, The Art of Asking. For the readers here who don't know, and the video watchers here who don't know, Anthony was a cross between a mentor, a parent, and a best friend to me, and he was a big part of the book. He died of leukemia right after it was published, after a 4-year struggle, and only 3 months before my only child, Anthony, Ash for short, was born. I got a coffee. Oh my God, you guys. I think this is going to get quite emotional. All right. I was lucky to have had a moment to prepare emotionally. Anthony was suffering physically so much by the end that there was a bittersweet sense of relief. 4 years is a long time to watch someone face off with cancer and death. I spent 4 years knowing that, barring a miracle, I would probably lose my best friend and confidant. I'd never be able to talk to him again, never be able to regale him with an amusing story or ask for advice, never be able to send him into a giggling fit with one of our immature in-jokes, never again walk through our favorite spot in the woods or feel his comforting arms around me in a compassionate hug when I was wounded and hurt and just needed to be held quietly by someone who really deeply understood me. When Anthony finally died, I walked around in a trance for several weeks. I often couldn't think straight. Nothing felt normal or real. And mostly I remember feeling really, really, really lonely. Going into a coffee shop or a grocery store felt like entering a dark and horrific fun fair. I couldn't believe that everything could just be rolling along in its mundane way when things in my heart were so catastrophic. There's a thing you and your letter just made me remember, something that happened the day after Anthony died. It was June 2015. I was working in London and hugely pregnant when I received the phone call from our mutual friend, Nicholas. I think it's very close to the end. You should come now. Trust me. Just an asterisk side note, I talked about this moment when I did my stage show. There will be no intermission in the stage show that brought me to New Zealand. So if you guys have seen that show, and I know many of you have, you'll remember this moment from the show. I grabbed a cab to Heathrow and was on the first plane to Boston and raced in a taxi to Anthony's home, right across the street from the house where I grew up and where my parents still live. Even as the taxi pulled up into his driveway, I wondered if I would miss the moment, the last moment. I didn't. Anthony was in the living room lying in a hospice bed, barely able to speak. His wife Laura was there, his closest friends and family. We gathered around him, counted moments, took turns by his side. Sometimes Nicholas would take out a guitar and we would sing. We all just sort of circulated, trying to figure out how to be around a dying person and all this grief. I spent the nights sleeping in my childhood bed across the street from where Anthony had always been, from where he was about to leave. He died in that room a few days later. When it happened, it felt like a strange dream, impossible but true. The next morning was the solstice, the longest day of the year. I left my childhood home, walked across the street, and sat in the living room with Anthony's body. I looked at him. It wasn't scary. It was peaceful. Since I know you've read The Art of Asking, do you remember the scene I wrote in which the Kickstarter hit $1 million and I'm too distracted by my goddamn phone to listen to Anthony tell me about his cancer suffering? I was such a dick. That all took place at Pete's, our local coffee shop. Anthony had been a daily regular there for years, and the day staff all knew him and they knew me. We clocked at least 500 hours at those little circular tables talking about everything under the sun. It was our spot. On the day after Anthony died, I walked the 10 minutes into town and into Pete's to get a comforting flat white coffee and a banana muffin because I was grief-stricken and deserved treats. The guy behind the counter was Sam. I knew him, kind of. Sam was a shaggy-haired, tattooed, bespectacled artist in his early 20s, and he had developed an affectionate relationship with Anthony over the years he'd worked there. Anthony had introduced us with a kind of fatherly pride because he knew Sam was an emerging musician. And we would all joke with each other across the coffee counter. I think I should have a coffee break. All this talking about coffee is making me want coffee. Sam was in a band, a songwriter, and he had a wry sense of humor. He'd given me links to his music, and I'd given him words of encouragement. Anthony and I would sit at our little table at Pete's for over an hour, sometimes talking and crying and bickering and showing each other things on our phones and trying to untangle feelings and life and death. For the past 4 years, we've been sitting at that table knowing that our hours might be numbered. Sam was often there, a few feet away at the counter, aware of us, but not ever listening to the actual conversation. I would take Anthony's loyalty card and go up to Sam at the counter and fill up Anthony's teapot and order myself a second and third coffee and yet another muffin, which I always deserved because my life was always hard and I always deserved another fucking muffin. I just had to add the fucking because it just sounds right. Sam and I would exchange pleasantries and fist bump. I barely knew Sam. I just really liked him. Sam the sweetheart. And Sam was coincidentally working at the counter when I walked into Pete's that day after Anthony died. I was wearing sunglasses, I remember. It was the longest day of the year. It was sunny. It was hot. And my eyes were swollen and red from having cried the whole morning. Sam knew about Anthony and his cancer. We had discussed it occasionally in hushed tones the few times I'd been to Pete's on my own. And Sam didn't know the details, but he knew Anthony was sick. He knew he was dying. I stood in line. And it was my turn to order, and I took my sunglasses off. And Sam looked at me and saw my red eyes, and the words got stuck in my throat. And he said, Anthony. And I started sobbing right there at the counter. And I hadn't sobbed since Anthony had taken his final breath. And it was like in that moment, Anthony really had died. And how he was really gone. And telling Sam had made it real. Sam looked at me from across the counter and his eyes got wet with tears. And we didn't need to say much of anything. We just stood there in mutual grief and knowing and loving. Sam didn't try to say anything conciliatory or dramatic. He didn't offer me any platitudes. Maybe he said, I'm sorry, Amanda. But his tone was like, here's Penny in your letter. Yes, it's very sad. Thank you. This is it. We know this is it. One of the things I've thought about a lot is how much permission we give ourselves in this culture to feel fear as a normal and acceptable emotion. And I love that the fucking digger next door has just decided to crank up at the most emotional moment in my reading to move a house from where it is up the hill. Because this is our life. Normal and acceptable emotion. And also to really, truly grieve with abandon. To give grief the time and attention that it deserves. Coffee break. I think we do a pretty terrible job at making space for that crippling grief you mentioned. Your letter was so short and your choice of words was so perfect. It's not just the crippling grief, as you say, but the fear of that grief. Something that's crippling means that you cannot walk or move properly. And that's exactly what happens when somebody you love dies. Sometimes you literally cannot move. But there is a way you can turn this coin of grief and see the other side and the whole picture. The larger and more intense a love is, the larger the fear, the larger the grief. Love and grief are directly proportional, glued together, impossible to separate in scope and size. To put it simply, the more Jason loves you, the more he'll feel the grief and the fear of grief. But there is a way that you can both step back in the landscape of your lives right now and blur your eyes a bit and notice that the degree to which he feels that fear is simply a measure of his love for you. That grief, that fear, is how much he loves you. You simply cannot feel love, real love, without welcoming in this dark flip side, this shadow. And if you can blur your eyes fully, you can maybe accept that it is all one coin, that the fear isn't bad, or a price you pay, or a necessary evil, or a tax, bad, on your love, good. It is the love. The fear is the love. I got myself going, yeah. I should have brought some water too, but I will have to hydrate with coffee. This is hard to express in words, but what I am trying to say is that feeling of fear is a feature, not a bug. It is there to show you, to teach you, and it is there to explain the size of the love. There's a Buddhist-inspired saying that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. The point is, you cannot and should not escape the very human and very necessary pain of grief. But perhaps you can escape the suffering that comes with it, riding shotgun, which is the fear of the pain and the fear of the grief. You both know the grief will happen. It has to happen, but the fear can maybe be more gently dealt with. And so let's look at that. What is Jason afraid things will be like when you're gone? What is he afraid will happen as he faces the crippling grief? And perhaps who will take care of him and witness his grief and be there for him when he is in that crippling state of grief after you die? So in the days after Anthony's death, I found that the most important thing for me was to be around the people who understood that Anthony had died and knew what it meant to me. I'm close to a lot of people, for sure. Family and friends and fans and patrons and staff and collaborators. I have dozens and hundreds of strong relationships. But here was one of the hardest things when Anthony died. Most of these people didn't really know about or understand my relationship with Anthony. We were not part of one social circle. And even some of the closest members of my own family weren't really aware of the depth of our friendship. It was weird. Everyone in my life sort of understood that my best friend had died, but I didn't feel understood most of the time. The thorniest part of the grief and the fear of grief was the loneliness and the irony of the fact that the one person who would truly understand Anthony, my best friend, was the dead one. I found that in the years leading up to Anthony's death, I desperately wanted to go to the world and tell the story of Anthony Amanda. And so I wrote about him in my book, and I talked about him on my blog, and I shared the cancer updates on stage, even if people had no idea what I was talking about. And I did all of that to feel less lonely. And I had never talked very publicly before about this close, really important friendship of mine, but all of a sudden I had to, because I knew I was going to lose it, and I wanted the world to understand why I was grieving when the inevitable loss finally came. So back to the story. What I needed in that moment, in that coffee shop, the day after Anthony died, was a Sam. This person who I barely knew, but who knew Anthony just enough, and who had seen at a close but impersonal distance how connected we were. Sam, who didn't know very much about me at all and who didn't know much about Anthony, but who bore simple witness to the real depth of our relationship in a way that is hard to describe. And perhaps to help Jason before you die, Penny, give him some witnesses. Help there and figure out who the Sams are, who the people are who know not just Jason and not just Penny, but Jason and Penny. Who really knows the two of you? Who has borne witness to you as a couple? Who knows your love? Who's really seen it? Who gets it? And those are the people who Jason will need around to witness and to make space for and to honor his grief when you go. And if you're wondering who these people are or feel that there might be candidates for this position, get some clarity, look around and talk to each other about it. Pick the witnesses and the Sams that make sense. Get on the phone, stop at the shop, have a dinner party, Zoom if you have to, but tell the story and find those witnesses and tell the small and significant anecdotes of your era together and this love and grief story that really happened and is still happening. Don't exclude the dark sides of the story and the pain. Show it and tell them and dig deep and share the heart truths and tell the trials and the tribulations. Tell the love story. And maybe don't give it all to one person. Spread it around and diversify and pick your moment and pick your media. I don't know enough about your life to know how to advise about this specifically, but you know who you are and you will choose correctly. I'm a musician and I had a blog and I had shows and I had chosen families of weirdos and queers and artists, and I told them. And this is important to say. You need to tell the story to the people who want to hear the story, who are listening deeply, not to indulge you or amuse you or because they pity you, but because they really want to hear and hold and know the story. You need witnesses who have a profound, authentic, and loving curiosity about the story of Jason and Penny. And I think this will help Jason. I know it helped me with the fear. He will need to be seen by people who understand what the loss is and what it means and what the meaning of the penny-shaped hole is for him. And then maybe he'll be allowed to walk around in his inevitable and real and necessary crippling grief, feeling a fraction less lonely. And a thing is here, these witnesses may not be the obvious candidates. It may not be who you think it's going to be. It could be Sam at the coffee shop. It could be a therapist, a choir leader, a neighbor, an old friend, an aunt, an uncle. It may be someone who comes to the story with no baggage attached. You just don't know who is capable of being this sort of witness, this sort of receptacle to a story of love until you ask or try it out. Don't go looking where time and attention is not available. People have their own problems, their own dramas and pains and preoccupations. You cannot expect that it will be what it is supposed to be, if you know what I mean. And it may surprise you what happens. You need to ask to find out. And if you've read my book, you get the drift. You know this theme, right? Ask. Now, more than ever, you are dying. You're allowed to ask. So ask. Coffee break. Oh. I have a musician friend named Zoe Keating who lost her husband, Jeff, about 8 years ago to inoperable lung cancer. And they had a son, Alex, who was 4. And Zoe's been one of my lifelong heroes as a mother and a working musician and as a survivor and a dealer with her of a terribly shitty situation. And she's just an incredible person. And she and I talk a lot about life and grief and time and kids and how we handle shit. And she told me a few years ago that she wished that widows could still wear black for a year after their partners died, because she just couldn't deal with having to explain this shit over and over and explain that her husband had suddenly died tragically and way too young. Yes, it's very sad. Thank you. And that, yes, she was now a widow with a young child, dealing in real time with the shock and awkwardness other people had to deal with in her presence. And God damn it, Zoe said, if she could have just gone old school and gotten to wear black for a year, it would have been really handy. Jason won't be able to wear black. We don't do it that way anymore. And our culture has really fucked up how we deal with birth and death and cancer and chronic illness and miscarriage and abortion and on and on and on, and how we signify what people are going through. Most of us don't sit with the dead body anymore. Most of us don't sit Shiva for 7 days while everyone in the community slows way down to create space for the sadness. And this lack of space and this disconnect feeds the fear of grief, hammering another nail into the collective coffin of our separateness. And it seems to me that the next best thing we can do, unless we want to be real freaks, and print Jason a set of rotating t-shirts that say, hey, the love of my life just died of cancer. Please be gentle with me and don't make it weird, okay? Is to arm your chosen community, whether it's the family, the coffee shop, Sam, the grocer, the neighbor, the church folks, the book club, whatever, with the understanding that this is happening and that Jason will need you to understand this is happening. And you can sew together the metaphorical black veil and try to give that to Jason before you go. You cannot stop the dying part. You cannot control that, and neither can Jason, but you can control what the world around him might be shaped like when you go, when you do go, and you can help shape that world into a place that can hold him a little more gently and honor the story of you too, you guys, you two, and your enduring love story. And I just lost my place because I'm getting all emotional. Jason will carry that story with him forever until it's his turn to die. And the more witnesses to the story, the better. And all these people reading this letter, we're all seeing it. All of you watching this video and not reading this letter are hearing it. And Sarah Peetson, the illustrator I'm working with on this column, read your letter and this response, and she made a drawing inspired by you and Jason's love story. And she sent me a dozen drafts working in her studio in Australia while juggling her new baby, while I juggled being on a hectic road trip with Ash. And Sarah and I left each other endless messages talking about you and Jason and what kind of image we think might move you. And my assistant, Michael, in Brooklyn, read an early draft of your letter and my response and said that it brought him to tears. And I sent a near final draft of this letter to my friend Kaya in New Zealand, and she said it made her cry over her lunch break, and on and on. And this is the thing. You and Jason's love story has already become more real to more people. And it has inspired us to feel a little more deeply. And the story will keep going as people read this letter and comment on the post. And right now, maybe randomly for you, I am Sam. Sam, I am. I am Sam. Maybe for just a few minutes here, we can all be a Sam for you and Jason here on this little corner of the internet, on this video, in this letter. Why fucking not? Because the world is crazy, and the internet and this advice column and the readers and the watchers, it is just a bunch of real people. with real feelings, and they can hold you too if they want to. It's crazy. So, wrapping up, I love you, Penny. And I hope you are okay, and I hope I get to meet Jason someday. And if we are lucky, perhaps I will get to meet you before it is your time to go. And one last thing, you called Jason the love of your life. That is so rare. Do you know that? And so many people never get to say those words and really mean them. So you won the lottery there, both of you. And I am sending a heart hug to both of you, and I hope you both stay as safe from suffering and fear of grief as possible. And I hope you get to drink deeply from one another's loving company. And I hope you find the Sams. And I hope things are not too hard. And please know, Penny and Jason, if you read this, that we are all here thinking about. We are all here thinking about you. And we will be a Sam for you if you need us. And to everybody reading, that is you. So thank you. Be the Sam you want to see in the world. With all my heart, Amanda. Auckland, Aotearoa, New Zealand. February 2022. And then the post has all of the housekeeping and the credits, but I'm not going to read that. If you want to read it, you can go to the post. And I didn't expect to cry that much. I think there's something about reading this out loud that's very different than just writing it. But anyway, a lot of people helped me write it, and if you want to read the acknowledgements, you can go and read all the people who helped me edit and write this column. And the next one is coming out soon. What is it today? Today is Wednesday, February 9th. The next one is probably coming out on my Friday, so in 2 days my time, which is crazy because I haven't written it yet. I haven't written it, but I've chosen the questions. And this next one is going to be a lot of questions all put together with a lot of answers instead of just one big question. If you want to send in a question, it's askamanda@gmail.com. And I just want to show you one last thing because I opened it in a tab here. So housekeeping, general housekeeping, if you want to get my into the sales pitch, out of the fucking grief and into the sales pitch. If you want to subscribe to Ask Amanda, please do. I don't know how long it's going to last. It'll be at least another 3 weeks. I'm loving doing it. It's a lot of work, but I am loving it. Send in a question. Subscribe to the Substack. It's free. If you want to get these videos, it's $5 a month. It will help pay for everything. This is, I just want to show you guys one last thing, which is the Patreon post. I'm going to see if I can turn this around. This is the Patreon post that I did of the story behind the artwork. So that I was not shafting my patrons, because I already have all of these people giving me money every month to live. I put up a big long post on the Patreon just about a little bit about the process, and I know a lot of my patrons have also subscribed here to the Substack and to the paid tier, and everything will merge eventually, I'm sure. But I just wanted to show you, this is like, here's John Lennon and Yoko. This is me and Sarah and our text messages back and forth and all of her sketches and how everything came together, and then a little bit about the editing process and blah, 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 blah. So there's that. And the next couple days of my life is going to be fucking crazy as I work on part 2, number 2, Ask Amanda number 2. And it'll be out, and before you know it, I'll be making another one of these videos in a couple of days, and I'll put the video out a couple days after the column comes out, and then I'll start trying to put it out at the same time. And the last thing I want to say, you guys, is the fucking comments on this video, not on the video, on the post. This is why I did this. I wanted to create a space for people to also say their thing. And if you haven't read the comments on the actual text post here, they're incredible. And maybe I'll just read you one of them. This is from Lacey. This was so beautiful. My uncle died of a heart attack a few days ago, and I'm currently bearing witness to my aunt's grief. She's in her late 60s and has dementia, so she's continuously forgetting and remembering that he has passed, which is a special sort of hell. When she remembers and is racked with grief, I hold her hands and we cry. And then it gently turns, oh fuck, I just lost the comment. Hold on. Then it gently turns into a half-remembered story of their adventures. She describes to me the best she can with her flailing mind how much she loves him, and it feels even more honest and true and visceral because she can't find the right words. As if there simply are no words to describe the depth of their love and her grief. Thanks for helping me make sense of the role I've taken on. And I wrote back, dear Lacey, I'm sorry to hear that you're going through this, but I'm also so happy that you can be there as a Sam and a witness. And sometimes it's just being the net there to catch the stories as they spill so that they don't fall on the floor. Listening can be more powerful than adding or advising or counseling or anything. And sometimes it's the only thing we can give. And for those of us like me who tend to want to conjure up the perfect words, the perfect comforting expression, the perfect offering, it can be even harder. And I'm so glad she's got you. And may the coming days be not too hard. Love, Amanda. And then Lacey wrote back, thanks for your reply. I spent another day sitting with her, catching the stories and tears. Many times I reminded myself when I wanted to say just the right thing to make her feel better, that the most generous thing I could do was simply be there and listen. Thank you. And then a lot of people wrote back and forth with Lacey, and like, this is it, you guys. This is the fucking best, especially after like toxic Facebook and toxic Twitter and just being around people on social media yelling at each other. I could use a fucking year of this, honestly. I really could. Two other things quick that I was going to say before I let you go. One, I got a hold of Sam. I posted to my family on my old Lexington Facebook, and I found my old French teacher who knew a group of people from Pete's Coffee Shop who found Sam's mom, I think, and found Sam's email, and Sam and I have texted back and forth, and he loved the column, and it made me so happy that I could find the actual Sam. And also Penny wrote, and I hope, Penny, you're watching this, and we got to have a really lovely email exchange, and Sarah and I are going to print up a copy of the artwork that Sarah made and send it over to her and Jason. And if I didn't already say it, Sarah Beatson is this illustrator, old friend of mine who lives in Australia, and she's going to be illustrating the column every week. Like, it's part of what the money's going towards, is giving her this gig. And she and I have been having a blast, like dreaming up what the images are, and it's been so good. So I'm not going to spoil totally the next column for you, but I can tell you it is pandemic related, vaccine related, life, work, love, pain, hopefulness related. We got a lot of questions and about pandemic, COVID, vaccine, all that stuff. And I'm going to try and merge it all into one column. I'm going to try and write it tonight. I think that was it. Holy shit, this video is long. I don't know why I thought this video would be 15 minutes. I am on crack. Now I know how long this video is going to take every week. It's going to take like an hour. Okay. I love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing to the Substack. If you're a paid subscriber, thank you for kicking my ass and voting for video to do this. I'm glad I did video. I mean, this would have been good audio, but I'm not sure I would have gotten quite as emotional. Maybe I would have. I'll never know. I'm not going to do the audio experiment. This is it. I'm also going to put it, I think, up on YouTube, maybe Facebook. I don't know if Facebook will take a video this long. I know YouTube will. And that's it. If you want this next week, be a paid subscriber, leave a comment, and be the Sam you want to see in the world. And send Jason and Penny your love, either in this post or in the actual post. And I fucking love all of you guys. Mwah. We made it. We did it. All 15 minutes. Bye, everybody. I love you.